Okay, we're going to start recording now.
And I'll be on.
Okay.
All good.
There we go.
Just
Okay,
never Zoomed before, never Menti before.
Well, you're about to learn a lot then. A lot.
Kelly.
Okay, everybody. So as we listen to the presentation today, also don't forget to write down any questions that you may have. I did send this out in an email earlier, but we will have a question and answer period after Steve does his presentation. And we can also type them into the chat box. I'll be watching that, and there'll also be an opportunity on the screen to put that in there. And let's move on to our presenter tonight. So Steve Indig is from the Sport Law Strategy Group. Tonight he's going to give us a little knowledge on the value of governance and policies and how that can benefit your organization. He began his career with Sport Law and Strategy Group back in 2003, long time ago. And since then, he has had the opportunity to work with over 650 national, provincial, and local sport organizations, providing consulting and legal services. He also likes basketball a whole lot. So I'm going to hand it over to Steve now. And so, yeah, be ready with your questions, folks, and save them till after the presentation.
Okay, you can hear me? Thumbs up. Good. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. Normally, Tracy would have flown me out for this, but it's been crazy at times, and always love coming out to you guys. It does take a little time to get there, but always have a blast coming out your way. So yeah, I was just complaining before most of you came on the call about living in Ontario and literally not being able to leave our houses for the last 2 months or so. So it's been a been a slice down this way, but hopefully we're all coming out of this and we will get back to sport in some way. As Lisa said, I've had the ability to work with the Sport Law and Strategy Group for almost 20 years now across the country. We are a group of 14 people that work exclusively in amateur sport. And if you've never been to our website, take a look at sportlaw.ca. There are over 450 articles on governance, risk management, employment, COVID, inclusion, equity, diversity. We really try and pride ourselves on being on top of what's happening in the sport community. So you can learn a little bit about us. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today. Lisa tried to say I had 15 minutes, and I don't know if you can try and limit a lawyer to 15 minutes, but we're going to try our best to stay within that window. I wanted to talk a little bit about governance, and then we'll probably dive a little into the club manual that we've created, and now we've updated and likely will be updating again, but how it's such a good resource for you to utilize. And really governance is the catalyst that kind of leads us to this conversation. So let's start with an organization. How do you start one? And if you are not incorporated, I would be looking into becoming incorporated. I think it's super important from a liability perspective, at minimum, to have that corporation. And when you do become incorporated, or even if you don't, it's likely your decision makers would be viewed as directors. So your director is a person who's a member of the board, but it's the board is responsible for managing and supervising the entire operation. I want you to think about the board like the top of the pyramid, and the board delegates its authority to its coaches and to its staff and to its volunteers and to its committees. And I would highly recommend doing that with some sort of paper trail. So if you do establish a committee, is it a committee of the board? Is it a committee of the members? Is it a committee of the staff or operational committee? Are they advisory? Are they decision making? What's the composition? I think it's super important to try and put things in writing. That way, when somebody questions your motivations or your governance, it's right here in black and white. And it was something, for argument's sake, that was passed 6 years ago, and this is the way we've always done it. So, and it's not because I guess I'll pick on you, Tracy, tonight. It's not because Tracy says that's the way we do it. It's because the board passed a resolution to allow us to do it that way. So make sure that happens. When you become a director, you have 3 legal obligations: that of diligence, to act honestly, prudently, in good faith. And this is the huge one, in the best interests of the organization. Sport itself and the governance of sport is designed to be one big fat conflict of interest. Who are our normal board members? Parents, people who have a vested interest in the sport. And are they coming in necessarily for the best interests of the organization? I hope so. A couple little tricks you can do: ban the word I and my from your board meetings. And you'll see that changes the context of a conversation. Can we talk about my kids' team? Or can we talk about the U12 team, whose schedule doesn't seem to be very flexible or very fair compared to the U13 team? You can see it changes the dynamics of the conversation. You have the duty of loyalty to put your, not to put your position to further your private interests. And lastly, you have the duty of obedience to follow the laws and the bylaws and the regulations of the organization. If you don't like them, change them. Get the board to change them. Get the members to change them. When I started doing this 20 years ago, I really, truthfully, didn't think I'd have the ability to create a career doing this. How many bylaws can you do in amateur sport? And how many issues are there in amateur sport? And the answer is a lot, but I didn't know that 20 years ago. And we routinely, I mean, I've been doing bylaws for 20 years because we learn about them and we update them and we change them. The duty of loyalty is really important. And um, the word of, I'm trying to think of a word, the optics of the board, or the oversight of the board is best with each one of you or with each one of your board members. There is not an entity out there that oversees governance in sport. Oh, you were supposed to have your AGM March 1st. It's March 11th, knock, knock, knock. You didn't do that. That doesn't happen. So it's really up to each one of you to call each other out, and again, going back to picking on Tracy, let's take a motion to pay for the U13 girls basketball team to go to Vancouver and play in a tournament. And we're going to pay for that. And Tracy's kids on that team, Tracy should be out of the room, not discussing it and not voting on it, because her child is going to get a benefit. It's okay that her child gets that benefit, but it's not okay if Tracy's influencing that decision. And don't forget too, people are very unlikely to say uncomfortable things in front of your face. But if you're not there, there's a little bit of more of an open conversation to say, we shouldn't go with Tracy's recommendation for the new website because it's her husband. Sorry, Tracy, I'll buy you a drink the next time I see you. Yeah. So it's really important that we call each other out on that good governance protocols. So some basic principles: the board speaks as one voice. How does a board make a decision? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. We speak by democracy, and by coming out with that one voice is crucial. And I've said this for 20 years. If someone can tell me the benefit of somebody walking out of a board meeting going, oh, I can't believe they voted that way and I didn't vote that way, what a dumb bunch of board members, tell me the positives that come out of that. There are none. First and foremost, you should be setting the foundation of the organization, and we do that through approving and monitoring and updating policy. And it's crazy. It's hard. You look at the club manual that we're going to show you, or you probably have seen before. I think it's 160 pages. It is a lot. And I recognize that. And truthfully, my intent in doing what I do today was always to take a role like Tracy and Lisa have. I was like, this will leverage me into becoming an executive director of a sport organization. Hell no, I'm not doing that. It is way easier for me to tell Stacy, Tracy, and Lisa what to do than have to do it myself. But we need to establish that baseline principle of all the things that come across us. In sport these days, we need to know trans inclusion. We need to know human rights. We need to know accessibility. We need to know privacy legislation. We need to know anti-spam legislation. That's not even talking about having the expertise of volleyball or basketball or swimming. It's crazy. And that's why, yes, it is a 160-page document. Now, you may not need every single policy in there, but it is something we've routinely seen utilized. And obviously, we've tried to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. The other part of governance, of course, is establishing your committees and your staff or your volunteers. I recognize that your ability to hire staff or have multiple staff members is a bit more difficult just because of logistics and demographics. I appreciate that. But again, whether they're volunteered or whether they're paid, the governance should be the same, and we should have that paper trail and that document to support it. Governance is the structure the board uses to direct and manage the affairs of the association. Good governance is about achieving the desired results that you've set your mind to. About 15 years ago, Karate Canada was on the verge of losing its funding, losing its sport recognition, and we were hired to go help them. And my partner at the time and I, Rachel Corbett, who some of you might know, locked ourselves in a room, in a hotel room with 30 karate people. And we said, pretend Karate Canada doesn't exist. What do you want this entity to do? And it was very funny because at the end of it, I remember this like yesterday, one of the key priorities was a new website. Like, you're on the verge of losing your corporation's, your corporate status, Sport Canada recognition, and you want a new website. Yeah, we find it very complicated to use, but that was one of their desired results. And I'm okay with that. And you will never be everything for everybody. So establishing your directives and your obligations or your key points to which you want to tackle, do it. And then, you know what, 3 years from now, you'll do something else and you'll do something else. So don't think we need to be everything for everybody. Governance is about leadership, relationships, positive relationships, shared goals. It's a journey. It's not a destination. Sport Canada, or sorry, Canadian Olympic Committee actually last week came out with good governance principles. And some of them were 40% independent board members, 40% gender representation. I can share the document with you guys. Lisa, I'll email it to you. You can share it. And just some different ways of thinking about things. Now, that may not work in the Yukon as it would in Ontario, where we have $15 million PSOs and $8 million PSOs. That may not, I recognize the difference, but it's important to be aware of what's happening in the sport community and look at that journey that you want to undertake. And if, you know, if one of you is a president on this call or even a board member, you know, and I say to you, I'm going to pick on somebody. I'm going to pick on Judith. And I'm going to say this to you, Judith, rhetorically. You don't have to answer. You know, how do you know that you've been successful as a board member 18 months from now? And if Judith goes, I don't know, I'm just volunteering my time once a month for a 2-hour meeting, it's not really what I'm looking for. You know, we're trying to do these 6 things over the next 18 months, and we're going to monitor that. We're going to put in place things to do that. You know, you should have an open culture for debate, transparent sharing, grappling real issues. I will tell you fundamentally, and I'll probably repeat myself on this, and I think I have spoken to some of you on tonight's call before. If you call me with a problem, I am going to say to you, what does your policy say? And if your policy, if you say I don't have one, I'm going to be very angry at you because it makes my life and yours extremely complicated. So set that foundation. Good governance is about having the right model in place. We have evolved in sport. Before, we used to be these representative boards made up of people who had, you know, were parents or volunteers or people involved that a club becomes the PSO president. Like, it's just conflict all over the place. We want to get the right model in place. We want separation between our roles and responsibilities and clarity on your governance model. You know, I'd like to see your bylaws. I'd like to see committee terms of reference. I want to see staff job descriptions. I want to see volunteer job descriptions. And again, that provides clarity to everybody involved that maybe you're not even a decision maker, you're more of an advisory role. So if I don't listen to you, you can't be really that mad. We want to set strategic and financial plans. This is huge coming back from a COVID environment. And I recognize, again, a lot of the disadvantages that Yukon have in COVID. I think you had a big advantage because you guys did a great job managing it. But I've been preaching for the last 12 months, financial planning. You know, here in Ontario, we haven't had active sport in over a year. Ontario Soccer Association had 50 staff people, 50. They're down to 4. They had to lay off 46 people because of the financial downfall that occurred here. So look at your plans, have them in place, monitor them, share them, keep them updated. If we're doing well, we want to know. And if we're doing poor, we want to know early in the process, not when it's at 25,000. We probably want to know when it's at 2,500. Communicate that with your members. Let them know the good things you're doing and the changes you're making and the oversight you're providing. Update your policies. You know, people say to me, how often should we update them? I always kind of make a joke. I say, you know, do 2 every year. Because if you have 20, that means it's 10 years until you get to them again. And the work that Sport Yukon is doing to help alleviate that is really second to none. So I really applaud that. You know, I say this publicly all the time. If Sport Yukon comes to me and asks for a code of conduct, I'm probably giving the same one to Sport Ontario and to Sport New Brunswick and to Sport PEI, because being a good person really shouldn't matter where you live. So I think this is really helpful. So yes, there might be some nuances between cross-country skiing and athletics, but I think we can usually work out that 1% pretty easily. Have integrated risk management into your decision-making. Ask yourself 3 questions at a board table. What can go wrong? What's the likelihood of it going wrong? And can I control it from not going wrong? Add that as a standing agenda item too for your board meetings. Take you 3 seconds to go through a scenario. One of my favorite stories is, hi, Steve, we're sending our U14 girls team to California. Do we need chaperones? So I said, do you have kids? And she said, yes. I said, how old? She said, 13. I said, perfect. Are you going to send her to California with 14 of her friends unsupervised? Absolutely not. There's your answer. So risk management is very important to integrate into your system. Try and have a strong culture, a clear purpose, and of course, shared values. As I keep going back to this, you know, we don't own sport. We don't own cross country in the Yukon. We don't own basketball in the Yukon, but we own it in our umbrella. And if Tracy can get a permit at a gym to run her own program and doesn't want to be part of basketball Yukon, that's okay. But what we do in our bubble is what we control. So, and we can make that the place to be based on all of those things that we spoke about. Some commons, governance gremlins, conflict of interest, too many hats, lack of trust between decision makers. Artistic swimming had a board member years ago who was part of the PSO community. I think she was a swimmer herself, and then a coach, and then became a board member of Artistic Swimming Canada. She wrote a letter to the members on her way out as a board member saying, you know, when I was on this side of the table, you loved me and I was your best friend. But when I moved to this side of the table as a board member, you all thought I was out to get you. And we have to get rid of that transparency, that we are not making decisions in the best interests of the organization. We need to establish that trust and that we're making decisions that are positive. Make sure your board's not too big. A lot of times we use being a board member as a way to get volunteers. Go back to what the board should be doing: setting policy, setting strategic plans, setting budget. I actually say bluntly, being a board member should be boring, because how many people truly like talking about strat plans, bylaws, and budgets? What we really like to talk about is, man, who's the best basketball player in the Yukon? And you think they're going to get recruited by U Sport? And do you guys think we'll do well at Canada Games? I get it. That's the fun stuff. So draw a segregation between who needs to be a board member and who's a volunteer or a committee member. Put people in positions of strength. You know, if Stacy exclusively is excellence and high performance, great, Stacy, you're the chair of our high performance committee. You don't have to be on the board. So again, make sure you try and restrict it. I did some bylaw work with a club, with a hockey organization last year. 63 board members. 63. And after a 6-hour AGM, we got it down to 7. But it's just mind-boggling the way sometimes we just feel like that has to happen. Again, another area that I'll harp a little bit about, preach a little bit on is, wrong people on the board in terms of skills and knowledge and interest and commitment. I am a big advocate these days of nominations committees, of asking people, the right people to be on your board, advertise far and wide. You don't necessarily have to stay within your community. There are a lot of people who will volunteer, excuse me, who will volunteer and be on your boards. You just have to ask them and look for them and find them. Yes, you need volleyball people, but you also need legal people and accounting people and marketing people. I guess I always toot my own horn. Do I think I would be a great asset to anybody's board? Yeah. I mean, I live and breathe this stuff. Do I know anything about cricket? Absolutely not. But I still think I'd be a benefit to the board. So try and think about it a little bit more broadly, and target specific people based on it. Again, I think it might even be in the package. If it's not, Lisa and Tracy, I'll send it to you. Skills evaluations on the board. What are the gaps that exist? And we can help you figure that out so you can go out and try and figure out who the right person should be on the board. A board paradox is sometimes members do not understand the difference between governance and management. And I understand and completely understand, again, being up in the north, that a lot of times you don't have the luxury of staff or the luxury of the things that other organizations would have in the mainland. But I still think you have to draw a distinction between governance and management. And are we going to have a board meeting to talk about strategic planning and budget and end that board meeting and now talk about operational issues? I think it's important to draw a distinction between that line. And again, not everybody has to be a board member to help facilitate the governance and management of the organization. Make sure your board's not too meddlesome. I've actually had board members literally sit behind, the CFO and watch them input things into QuickBooks. You don't really need to do that. Make sure there's a respect. Make sure the board, of course, is not too focused on governance and loses carelessness in their oversight in financials. And my favorite thing Rachel used to say is, why get a dog and bark yourself? So again, recognize that distinction between your role. Governance starts with the board. First, decide what kind of board you're going to be. Are you advisory, which we don't see in sport? Basketball Canada kind of had an advisory board, but they've actually demolished it. It used to be like Brian Colangelo, Steve Nash, Jamal McGlure, very high profile people, which was great. But of course, I think they were quite busy people, and really focusing on Basketball Canada wasn't their priority. So they've changed their board structure to be more governing and policy. And of course, you guys, again, with your resources that are available to you, you likely would be operational, administrative, as well as policy. But you still have to, again, establish that foundation. Boards could be small or large. My sweet spot is 7. That's usually kind of the number I like to see. They may be representative or independent. Of course, we'd like to see them to be more independent. They could be elected or appointed, or consist of experts or everyman. How do you decide? What decision does the board want to make? Do they want to just do that high level governance, or do they want to get into the weeds? And if they do, then you of course become more administrative. And again, what's the relationship if you have the luxury of staff? Would be really important to figure that out. And I find what happens is a lot of organizations hire staff, but they always just kind of hire an administrative person. And I really think sometimes for a little bit more money, or even finding the right person with the money you have available, you can get some really skilled people who can lead your organization without being just administrators. Do you know how many sport administration grads are coming just out of Ontario every year? 2,500. Every year, there's at least 2,500 people. That's just Ontario that I can think of, let alone the rest of the country. There's some really good people out there. We just have to find them. Good governance, set your vision. Where are you going? What do you want to do? How are we going to get there? And God, do we have the resources to do this? And if we don't, we either have to change our plan or go get those resources. And like I said before, monitor it. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't think this is going to work, and we're not going to be successful, but recognize it and be accountable to yourselves and your stakeholders with what you're trying to do. and when and if not, if you can't do it. Some key lessons: the board governs, directors do not. I've actually labeled a disease. It's called presidentitis. I'm the president of whatever, and I get to do whatever I want. Well, half the time you don't even get a vote. So you don't even have a decision-making authority. So, I want people to recognize the power of the board as a whole. And how do we make that decision? All in favor. Governance is not management. And of course, creating an oversight of policy is your primary role and function. This is the last slide, and then I'll turn it back, Lisa. We can talk more specifically about stuff. I think I might have stayed in my 15-minute window, but we'll see. Poor governance is all too visible to your members. And what I mean by that is if people are talking negatively about you, we hear that all the time. But good governance is always not visible to people from the outside. And a good governance can make an organization great. And I really truly believe this. If no one's talking about you and no one's, you're not in the gossip mill, that means you're doing a great job. It really does. There's not too many people who are going to be slapping you on the back and shaking your hand and thanking you. It's a thankless job. But if no one's talking about you, you're doing some really cool things. Oh, I lie. I'm not done, Lisa. Sorry. I just want to quickly talk about policies. They are your best friends. You'll run into problems when you don't have them. They don't fit within your culture. You choose not to follow them, or they don't fit within your organization. As I said before, hi, Steve, I've got a problem. My first question will be, what does your policy say that I can help you try and understand and implement to solve your problem? And what we see happening routinely is, well, we adopt the NSO's policies. And the NSO's policies were probably written for the NSO. Softball Canada will appoint a case manager. They're not going to appoint a case manager for you. So you've got to make it work for yourself. Another favorite one of my stories. Hi, Steve. We opened up a hotline, Safe Sport. Great. That's phenomenal. Good for you guys. Someone called it. Yeah. What do we do? What? You opened up a hotline. You don't know what to do with it? Well, we thought it was a good idea. Do you have a policy? No. I'm not joking. We took a month to figure out what the hell to do with this complaint because they were a PSO without a policy. The NSO was like, no, we're not taking it. It took forever to figure out. Choose to follow your policies. If they don't work, change them. Again, I bang my head against my desk often. Hi, Steve. We appointed a 5-person discipline panel to hear a complaint on Tuesday night. Well, it says here at section 3, the panel's only 3 people. Why do you have 5? Oh, we thought that was a good idea. No, now you have grounds for appeal. You didn't follow your policy. And again, make sure they fit within your culture and your organization. I actually, Tracy and Lisa and all of you, you're probably very friendly with the NWT people. And I actually remember, who can I throw under the bus there? Who's the guy that moved to Alberta? Meckling, Rob Meckling. I'm going to throw him under the bus. So Meckling hires me to come out to the NWT and do a presentation on policies. And I say, okay, here's my presentation. Do you think this fits within the culture of NWT? Do what you always do. And I show up to Hay River and I do this presentation about why you need 30 policies. And this woman puts up her hand and she says, you realize we play basketball in the library and we move the books to play and you want us to have a 100-page policy manual? And I went, Meckling, you schmo, you've set me up for failure. And I want to say the same thing to you guys. You got to make sure these fit within your ability, your ability and your understanding and your resources. And if they don't, then Lisa and Tracy and I have a conversation and we figure out how we make it work. So, make sure it fits within your policies. They are your best friend. They will guide your actions. They will help you avoid a problem. I gave you the example before. Oh, Tracy, you're just suspending me because, you and I have bad blood from something that happened 3 months ago. No, I'm suspending you because you breached section 2 of the policy that was passed 9 years ago and I wasn't even here. So really love that from a policy perspective. And again, they will help you. They will provide you a management structure on how to deal with issues. And that's really what I spend most of my time doing. I write a ton of policies, but when people call me with complaints, I help them interpret what the hell to do. And in some cases, we take over, if we can, the entire process if possible. There's different types of policies out there: framework policies, vision, mission, values, mandate, your governance policies, and then your operational policies, which are of course more on ice, on field type issues. The governance would be that more administrative type of policy that would be very common. What you're seeing in the club manual is absolutely the administration policies. That's why the document works. It doesn't talk about volleyball, basketball, or swimming. It just talks about administrative issues. Some policy templates: purpose, what's it for, who does it apply to and when, does it not apply, and then the scheme, who does what, when, where, and how. And we've tried to keep that format in the documentation. From a hierarchy perspective, your constitution, your articles of incorporation, or maybe you guys have societies, that would be your top, and then of course your bylaws would be second in line. So we again want to make sure there's alignment and try not to do duplication. For example, some people will do objectives. I wouldn't do objectives. They're probably in your articles of incorporation. They're already there. They don't need to be in your bylaws. So just be careful about not creating policy on policy. Now I'm done. If anybody has any questions or comments, by all means, ask away. If you don't feel comfortable talking about something in this public setting, there is my contact information. More than happy to have a chat to try and figure out what your particular issues or concerns may be. But I am going to, you guys can have this presentation, as I said before, so by all means, don't feel you have to write that down. I'm going to stop sharing so we can all see each other. And Lisa, back to you.
Okay. Just give me a second, everybody. I'm just gonna take a look. I'm glad to see everybody still engaged. I saw a lot of head nodding and surprised looks. 64 board members, like what?
I appreciate all of you listening and giving me your acknowledgements, because yes, talking about governance and strategic planning and bylaws and policies, it's hard.
It may be hard, but it's so worth the time to get to the discussions open with this stuff. And feel free, anybody, to type into questions. So if you want to put it in the chat box, it's hard for me to actually get to them all. I see there's a couple there that we're going to start with. But if you go back to your Menti, while we answer these ones that have just come through the chat box, you can also put your questions on the screen right now through Menti. Again, the code is in your chat box or at the top of the screen. So let's just go back and yeah. So who had the first question? You can unmute yourself too, folks, if you wish. And I think our first question was from, let me pull it up. Okay, a couple of questions from Alex. For governance models, where do results-based models fit in a multi-sport recreational organization?
I'm not even sure I understand what a results-based model is.
Okay, Alex, do you want to unmute and maybe just ask? Second question while Alex is doing that is, for the 1% policies that need more customization than a code of conduct, what are some good questions or practices to help create or modify these policies?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'll tell you what I do. Like normally when I do policy work with a client, is we prefer to do the heavy lifting. So we have been working on these policies for 20 years. And we are, if you those of you who have been around long enough, pull up one of our policies from 20 years ago, it probably does very much look the same as it does today. But there are edits and changes and learnings that we've been able to incorporate. So normally what I do with a client, we decide on the policies that are needed. We do the heavy lifting of the first draft. We send it over to the club and we say, read it and note your comments and note your questions and note your concerns. And then normally I would get on the phone with them and we'd walk it through or talk it through. I don't know what's a crazy, stupid example, a panel of 3. Well, Tracy, I'd probably recommend a panel of 1. Why not? Let's have that conversation. So I think it's really important for people to read them and to figure out, again, I know what I know about your sport, but you know more. And you may say to me, in a complaint management process, a case manager, a mediator, an investigator, and a 3-person panel, well, that's half my membership. That's way too many people involved in the disciplinary process. Can we simplify it? Okay, let's have that conversation. So that's kind of how I would deal with that. It's hard to find, but it is hard to find the 1%. But, I've got clients who we send $5,000 or $10,000 worth of policies to them, and they don't say a word. And I've got others who, we're on draft 11, depending on the feedback that they provide to us. So it's up. Short answer is read it.
Okay, just going through the Menti, we have a question on the Menti. Do you have a safe sport policy in the manual?
Yes, we do. So good, really great question. This is a whole other presentation in itself. Sport Canada has mandated lots of different movements in the safe sport area. You probably have seen a lot of your NSOs moving in the things they've been doing. We have integrated the Universal Code of Conduct into the update, but we have not included the mandatory third-party management of complaints. That's not a requirement at the PTO level yet. It may become. So you have a bit of discretion with how to manage a complaint. So yeah, we've done as much as we can right now.
Great. Okay, there's a lot more questions. Alex got back and said, I guess the question would be, if you have experience with that, typically smaller orgs have that hybrid. He's somewhere loud. I'm sorry. Working with a board, policy board, results-based, which typically is a hybrid of the two?
Working board.
Does that make sense?
I mean, if you're asking my opinion for what I think I know about the sports in the Yukon, I'd be looking at a policy/administrative board. So as I said, set the foundation through the policy and governance work. And then of course, if you are getting into the operations, which I think you likely are, that would be the best model. If you have the ability to segregate the operations into committees or volunteers or staff, again, I would promote that as well.
Okay. Okay. Back to the Menti question board. A question has come in anonymously. You mentioned that board members can be elected or appointed. At what point would a board appoint a board member other than when there was not enough people to hold a vote?
Yeah, great question. I'd have to go back and check your legislation to say if appointments are legal, but let's assume they are. I would do it for 2 reasons: to fill a vacancy on the board and to fill a particular skill set that may be missing from the board. Those would be a couple good reasons.
Okay, and a couple good questions from Sarah. Why would or wouldn't a small sport organization become incorporated? You had mentioned it earlier in your presentation, Steve, and we're hoping to learn more about what being incorporated means to a sport organization.
Yeah, great question. So being incorporated means you have registered with your territorial government as a corporate entity. And Lisa or Tracy, you can help me out here. Are you not-for-profit corporations? Are you societies? Do you know the proper language? Anybody?
Societies.
Societies, yeah. So you would register as a corporate society, and once you've done that, you get what's called a corporate shield. So in law, we recognize 2 things: people and corporations, and let's include societies as part of that corporate protection, which is true. People can get sued, corporations can get sued. When you are incorporated as a society, you get this, what I call a corporate shield. You get this circle around you. I cannot personally sue you because of the conduct of the corporation, of the society. So I don't care if I don't know what the biggest sport in the Yukon is or the smallest sport in the Yukon, incorporate. I do not want any of you to lose your house, your home, your life savings because you were personally sued. It's crazy. The cost to incorporate is usually under $100. Maybe it's 150. It's a bit of a joke. And it really should become a cost of doing business. Sometimes people sue because of necessity, not because of vengeance, right? So I think I may have said this before, if I'm a paraplegic, I need money. I got 2 kids at home and I have no income. I need money, so I'm going to sue somebody. Yes, you may have insurance through your PTO, through Sport Yukon, through your NSO, but insurance only applies in certain situations, not all of them. Particularly right now, insurance companies are not providing coverage for COVID claims. And I don't think there's going to be any, but they're not, just as an example. And also abuse coverage is now being excluded under your general liability policies. So if there is a sexual assault in your sport and you go get sued, which happens routinely, for those of you who are familiar with artistic swimming, you might look at the lawsuit that was publicized yesterday. They are being sued. Now, is their insurance going to kick in that scenario? Probably, but I don't know the answer to that. And if it doesn't, the organization will be responsible for the outcome. So I am a huge advocate. If you're a rope jumping Yukon, or if you're volleyball Yukon or hockey Yukon, you incorporate.
Excellent. Good information. I know nothing of that. So if anybody's sending me emails tomorrow or tonight, we'll get the answers for you. Okay, I think we got one more question. Oh, it's more of a comment. My understanding is directors can still be liable, but that's why you get director's insurance.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to breach the corporate shield to say you acted outside the scope of a normal director. Is it possible? Yes, of course it is. A good legal answer to any question is maybe, unfortunately. So yes, can directors be sued personally? Yes. Have I seen it in my day in 20 years? No. Yes, that's why we get general liability insurance. That's why we get directors and officers. But again, those are cases when the insurance applies. And yes, insurance will likely cover 90% of your claims. But again, that's why lawyers exist, is for that 1%.
Okay. Okay, one more question just came in, Steve. I know you're probably trying to get on to your next call.
I got 11 minutes.
Okay, we're going to use it, I'm sure. We are part of Cycling Canada and are very connected to all of the provincial cycling organizations. We often take what these other organizations have for policies, adopt them to our needs, and use as our own. Is that okay? Does that put us at risk?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great practice. Look, I don't really care where you get them from. I'll be honest with you. If someone came to me and said, well, equity, diversity, and inclusion, that's a hot topic these days. Did I have an equity, diversity, inclusion policy in my suite of policies? No, I did not. I've never written one. What's the first thing I'm going to do to write one? I'm going to Google and I'm going to pull up a whack of examples and I'm going to sportify them and I'm going to make them speak English and write it. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for not recreating the wheel. And if they work for cycling, other PSOs or PTOs, great. Again, my caution is read it, make sure it works for your organization. Like I said, I've written them. All discipline matters will be managed by the Sport Law and Strategy Group. You may say, Jeff, well, I'm not doing that. We can't afford it. Like, it's just not happening. So I think you just have to make it work for you. But yes, steal away.
All right. Excellent. Well, lots of information. I know you did great on the time limit, Steve. I very much appreciate your time and your advice and just your overall knowledge and your approachability. So thank you for that. Yeah. Any final questions before we leave? Let Steve go. We're going to let him go early. So maybe if we have further questions, or if you do, or you think of some tonight after this presentation, feel free to email me at projects@sportyukon.com. It'll be shared at the end. And I could always maybe just, get another answer from Steve and send it back. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask. Thank you very much, Steve. I learned, I took 5 takeaways out of your presentation tonight. So I learned 5 new things, and yeah.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, everybody. Stay safe. Enjoy your ability to play sport. And again, thanks for listening. I do recognize it's a tough topic to hear about governance. Quick question, Sarah, go for it.
Yeah, sorry, I thought maybe if I ask it, it'll be quicker than typing. It's actually more for the Sport Yukon team. I was just wondering if Sport Yukon is going to be hosting like any info sessions or anything regarding the recent changes to the Societies Act for sport organizations.
Yes, actually, we've been in. Tracy, did you want to speak to this, or do you want me to go ahead?
we would say the same things. You keep rolling.
Okay, so we have been in conversation to a degree with the Society's office, so the corporate affairs, and we have been told that they will themselves be rolling out public orientations and training times after April 1st. So we're just as much in the know as you. We've asked for a little more information. With that being said, however, we do have Sport Law Strategy Group working on our revisions or the next edition of our sport club operations manual, which we have. So if you have not seen that in your organization, which Steve was referring to many times in his presentation, the policies, the bylaws, basically he's there, I believe so, Steve, and you can tell me if I'm totally out to lunch here, but you're going to be reviewing the new legislative changes and the regulations in the Societies Act, and then you will update the manual with those. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. What we're going to do is look at the significant changes, and we'll update them in the. You'll see when you go through the manual, there's like a page or two about what are bylaws and why do you need bylaws, and then we provide a template of bylaws. So we're going to update those two sections to comply with the new legislation. I'm laughing because we just did the last update, I think in November. So it'll be a second edition will be short-lived. The third edition will live a little longer.
Excellent. Okay, so if everybody can just stay on the call, we just have a few more questions to get through our night. It honestly won't keep you more than 10 minutes, but if Steve needs to exit, thank you again, Steve. I know everybody.
Good night, everybody. Yeah, I got to go. Thanks, everybody, for having me.
you.
Good night.
Okay. So to get some feedback, now I want everybody and anybody to talk during this time. You can unmute your mics. We can have a little conversation just like you're with your best buddies, having a glass of beer or a glass of wine or a pop. So really, we just want to get some feedback from tonight. And since this is our first one, so topic check-in. Do you have a better understanding of the Sport Yukon Club Operations Manual? If you can head to your Menti again, and we can see some live results on the screen. Again, gives us a really good indicator of how we're doing and if this topic and the presentation actually met your expectations a little bit. So, and the second question with that is, do you plan on using this manual within your organization? Okay, so we'll give you a few more seconds here to populate the screen. Good, nice. So this little spot in the middle is 3.7 with the line. That's the average between the 3.3 and the 4. So I think we haven't failed. I think we've done pretty good so far. I think Steve did a great job of an overview of just that. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Lisa. I mean, even for me, I think going through what that manual had, because it's so long, it took me, we first had that done in 2016. It took me a year to even get through it and understand what's in there. So I think it would be a good idea for us to somehow break it down, the key ones that people should be considering, and we can ask Stephen to highlight that as well.
For sure. So on the screen right now, I've just shared a new screen. This is the document. So some of you may have seen it. You might go, oh, that's what he was talking about. Some of you might say, I haven't seen it. Maybe your president has it. Maybe they never shared it. So this is the document. It comes in a Word version. Its table of contents is extremely thorough. So everything from your purpose of the manual with your mission, vision, and values, it'll take you through governance, certain models, roles of directors. It goes through meetings, committee, complaint management, human resources, programming, policy support. So this whole section right here, page 132 to 175, 170, is all policy templates and things that you can copy and paste and fill in the blanks. So if I was to go to the privacy policy, for example, this is what it looks like. You put in your organization name, here's the definitions. And again, you don't want to change a lot of the wording, but you can take some out and put some in that suit your organization. So really user-friendly, and I mean, so thorough, and it's already been vetted by a law firm. So and also, Steve didn't give himself a lot of credit. He actually does a lot of the policy work for NSOs. I know with volleyball, on one of the boards I sit on, he did all of our recent policies in the last 5 years for Volleyball Canada. So it was him personally. So this will be emailed out. Yes, Scott. And if anybody else needs it, just send me an email at projects@sportyukon.com. But it's 177 pages. I thought it was 172, so I was off a little bit. All right, we're going to go into the couple more quick slides, and when I say quick, they're quite quick. So thank you for the feedback so far. I'm going to hand the table over to Megan Cromarty over there in the Sport and Recreation branch. I think it's time for me to take a break.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, so before we kind of end tonight's huddle, we just wanted to hear from you maybe what your one takeaway or one thing that you're going to take back to your organization, and something that you guys will probably or hopefully follow up on or have learned from today's session. So you can just type it into your Menti and it'll anonymously pop up on the screen. I'm pointing to the screen, you guys don't know. Yeah, but so yeah, we just are hoping to learn what really was highlighted for you tonight. So. Very cool. And don't feel like if you're leaving this meeting being like, oh my God, what our board is like, what are we doing? We're like so far behind. Like this is like ongoing work, and there's always ways to improve. Like no board is ever perfect, and so this is very common comments that a lot of boards are kind of feeling the same way. Look at all of them popping up. Holy smokes.
And I would just throw in, Megan, that even when you are on top of it and you're constantly updating and everything like that, then it's just human nature that there's going to be some set of circumstances that you didn't anticipate, and your policy is not quite what you need, and you have to go back and make some adjustments for whatever the facts are facing.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
Hey, Megan, I have a question. It's Alain Masson from Cross Country Yukon. I sit on a couple committee with our NSO, and we're going through a lot of work right now for safe sport. Do you think the same requirement will come down to provincial sport organization in terms of funding and expectations as it is right now with NSOs?
Specifically around safe sport or?
Around safe sports, yeah. Sport
Yeah.
Canada is starting to implement requirements for organization to maintain their funding in terms of expectations, policies.
Yeah, I think yes, it will. We're of course not right there right now, but it definitely, I think, is coming, and it's something that we're kind of talking at the branch level and how to implement it. And it's something that we'll probably be highlighting through some of these huddles too. And I think Lisa might even have something at the very end of this, a little flashy video to show everybody. But yeah, it is coming. It's a very important piece, and we'll be sharing more information. So.
Thanks.
Yeah, we certainly do, Alain, have a lot of information that's constantly being sent out from our, not just Safe Sport Canada, or not just from Sport Canada, but down to the NSOs. And I know a lot of the NSOs have done a great job already of getting it through to their PTSOs, and then down to club levels. And then there's some, and I would say majority of the case, it seems to be, that have not even started pushing it out to their PTSOs. Because it was mandated on April 1st in the middle of a pandemic, a lot of people it just went over their head or past them. They didn't even see it. So they're trying to roll it out now more. I was just on a call with a national sport organization today, and they're just starting the push now. So we're almost a year behind, but they are held accountable to get this out at the NSO level. So I'm assuming that somewhere closely to soon, things will be coming our way as well.
Yeah, it is coming. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so here's a question. We want this to be somewhat audience driven. We're trying to prioritize what's going to be coming next in the next 2 or 3 months. So as you're filling in your next Menti, you got to put things in order. Prioritize the following topics according to your organization, not just your needs, because remember, there's no word. We got to remove the word I from your organization. It's about your organization. So if you can prioritize those as I just keep rambling here for a couple seconds. what I was going to just to suggest was that we have a lot of information to share. Next month, we're going to tackle onboarding. We know that from the results of meeting with so many of you over the last few weeks, in the last 2 months, number one considerations were onboarding, and everybody was really keen to see how things were going to roll out with bringing on new board members, because AGMs are coming up quite soon, I think, for majority of organizations. So Sue Meikle will be presenting at our next monthly huddle, and she will be touching base in 15 to 20 minutes, something like Steve did, a basic overview. And in the future, we'll have some learning labs where you can learn a little bit more about that topic, and even training opportunities. So as we prioritize, now these results, again, of this meeting can all be downloaded at the end. Even you can share them with your organization, which is really cool. Onboarding is still in the top 3, so that's good. We haven't seen a lot of move. This financial literacy for board members seems to stay up there. It's quite a good one. So thanks for the responses.
I couldn't figure it out.
Oh.
It's okay. I'll learn it.
So here's how it turned. So here we go. So this is now what we have. Onboarding is number 1. Strategic planning came in 2nd. How to host effective and efficient meetings. Wow, right? And financial literacy, we've got a learning lab coming up for that in April, so we'll keep you tuned in. We'll send out notifications. Dispute resolution and team selection process. I guess team selection processes aren't high on our priority list right now, unfortunately. Okay, Megan?
Helps if I unmute myself. These huddles are really meant to be engaging, and we want them to be extremely meaningful to all of you as participants and sport organizations. So we would like to hear from you. Is there anything else that the Sport and Recreation Branch or Sport Yukon can do to support your organization, or any services, programs that you know of that you would like more COVID? Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the things popping up on the screen. So just feel free to pop in there anything that you may want from either Sport Yukon or the Sport and Recreation Branch, information, programs, services, anything. So, and in response to your COVID relief, there is likely going to be maybe some in the new fiscal coming very shortly. So.
Anybody else got anything to add? There's got to be something. Oh, here we go. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Societies Act is going to be a big piece of it. I did send out a communication just on March the 5th, just sharing the press release that came, or sorry, the news release from the Yukon government with the links to the actual legislation and the act changes. And we're yet to see anything on the corporate affairs website through the government website. More stuff like this. Nice.
Yeah, in regards to that Societies Act, we are trying to work with societies, and hopefully, whether they're sessions specifically for sport organizations, or even just kind of a cheat sheet answers and that sort of stuff specifically related to sport organizations. So we're hoping to get something a little bit like that to share with everybody. So as soon as we do, or we have some answers, we will let you know.
Okay, that's excellent. Okay, everybody. So just to speak to the onboarding session of next month, so it'll be the Thursday or the Saturday. If we don't have people signing up for the Saturdays, we most likely will discontinue them, because I know the spring weather is getting us all outside, so I hope that's okay. But please know that we will have this recording available, and we'll post it on our website, and I'll give you the link, and you can share it with your organization. And here's a little thing. I don't know if anybody has time, but this is just on our website as well. It's just a quick video about safe sport, because I know that question came up. It's available. It's on all over social media.
This is not about sport. This is about humanity. We're trying to build athletes that are competent, that are technical and tactical, but that are also humans first.
It started with us. It started with the organization. It started with the coaches. It started with the officials. It starts with the administrators.
If you just take a moment to focus on the person, to understand what they're going through.
Ultimately, everyone in the sport community plays a vital role in creating a positive, safe sport environment.
pour avoir des environnements sportifs sains, sécuritaires, il faut travailler ensemble. If the education is there and the awareness is there, I think that'll change the behaviors and change the mindsets of a lot of individuals.
Ensemble, nous pouvons contribuer à créer un environnement sécuritaire.
This is about creating a safe place for the top athletes in our country to achieve their goals.
Together, we can make sport a safe place for everyone.
Together, we can make sport a safe place for everyone.
Together, we can make sport a safe place for everyone.
Excellent. All right. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen so everybody can see my lovely decal behind me that says Sport Yukon and my t-shirt I was representing. I see some of you were trying to, I can tell. One last thing. We're going to do a virtual high five. Can I ask everybody, if you can, to put the gallery view on your screen? So you see like all these little squares, looks like the Brady Bunch kind of thing going on. Let's see if you can do that. I can see Hunter jumping in back. What's he always just a jumper bean back there? Okay, so unmute your mics, please. And we're gonna go like this. We give high fives to the person on either side of your square.
Oh, funny.
Can we do this?
Yeah.
Come on, Stacy, you're on my, all right, high fives, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hope to see you next month. And if you have any questions or even more feedback you want to provide, we're always here for you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.